Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second part of my instructions on how to work with percents and the common percent problems. On this one, again, I'm recording these on July 16th, and as of that day on page M15, it talks first about calculating the percent. There's a formula that I recommend using. Now, later, I'm going to show you how you might use proportions to solve for missing information. But when it comes to figuring out the percents that a smaller number is of a larger number, really this formula works beautifully. And it's much quicker than trying to do a whole proportion and cross multiplication thing. So let's take a look. The percent of anything is where you take the part, the smaller amount, and divide it by the total amount. Then, because it's a percent, you multiply by 100. So a percent is equal to the part divided by the total times 100, where a part is a part of the total. It's the smaller value. For example, if you have one part out of 2 total, you have 1 over 2, 1 divided by 2, or 50%. 1 divided by 2 times 100. And that's a trick, I should say, that I use a lot when I'm trying to make sure that I have the right formula, or if I'm trying to figure out a way to solve a problem. I will often use easier numbers to set up a problem and see if the answer makes sense. Then, when I know that 1 divided by 2 times 100 is 50%, and that's what I was expecting for an answer, I know that I have the right idea for the formula. Just a little side note for solving problems where you don't entirely know or remember the formula to use. Let's take a look at example 6. Dominic answers 111 out of the 170 problems on the T's correctly. And the question is, will he be able to apply to Durham Tech, which, as far as I know, as of July 16, 2021, is having a score of 65% or more. I'm going to let you pause recording because I think this formula is pretty straightforward that we have there, and let you see what you get for an answer. And then what I think I'm going to do, go ahead and take a look at example 7 as well. It's the same type of problem. And when I resume the recording, we'll be over on my .cam with the information written out to solve these. Let's take a look at example 6. Dominic had 111 correct out of 170 total problems. The formula, percent equals the part, which is the smaller number, divided by the total, the larger number, times 100. So we're going to do 111 divided by 170 times 100. And that ends up being 65%. So yes, Dominic, go for it. And there's a reason why I picked this particular values. I wanted to show you that if you're applying to Durham Tech, that out of the 170 problems on the test, you need basically 111 correct. Now, I will say we do need to keep in mind that 150 problems will be graded. We don't know which 20 are not graded. So I could do a slightly different calculation to figure out how many of the 150 graded problems are correct. But assuming that it's an equal balance between the ones you get right and the ones you get wrong, 111 out of those 170 should give you the 65% that you need to apply to Durham Tech. For example 7, I'll give you a moment to pause and give this one a chance. Okay, Muhammad's got 136 of the 170 problems correct. Let's see if he can get an 80% or higher. Well, each time I'm going to write my formula. It helps it get into my long-term memory. Percent is equal to the part over the total times 100. And that means I've got 136 divided by 170 times 100. And if I remember correctly, that's exactly, yep, 0.8. So 80%. So yes, Muhammad, feel free to apply to that school as well. Well done. Let's go ahead and check out what the next problem is. Got one more example problem just to show how the wording can change. So your job is to be able to recognize what type of problem, what it's asking for. So in example 8, if there are 70 problems on the test and you get 65 correct, what percent are correct? And on this one, I thought we'd do an estimation. I couldn't really estimate in terms of trying to figure out, is it 65 or 80%? But this one, I'm hoping you will. You did really well. You got 65 correct, and there were 70 problems total. So if I'm going to estimate, I'm guessing you got at least a 90. I think you got at least an A for doing that. So my estimate will be at least 90%. Now what it, but less than 100%, right? You didn't get all 70 correct. So somewhere between 90 to 100%. And I'll give you a moment to solve this one. Maybe you wrote the formula again. So what you get? 65 divided by 70 times 100. That ended up being 92.9%. So it's at least 90, but not 100. So that looks like a really good answer. Let's move on to what is currently page M16. This is where we're going to calculate the part and the total amounts. And there's two methods that I prefer for calculating the part and the total. There's a proportion method and the direct translation method. And I want to continue that important note that estimating answers can be a quick way to choose the correct answer. You can always come back and finish solving it exactly later. If you have, so what it says is a direct translation is the simplest way to answer questions like, what is 15% of 80? If you have something that's just really obviously this is what you're being asked, I strongly recommend you do the direct translation method. This is also, I'm going to say, the most common way of phrasing questions for word problems that involve percents. For example, on the next page, and then when we do ones with the circle graphs, or I talk about having problems where they give you a bunch of percents together, those inevitably will end up with something that's similar to what is 15% of 80. So keep that in mind, that doing a direct translation will be the quickest way of solving this type of problem. So what's the direct translation method? Well, the word what becomes the letter X that we're solving for. Is going to always mean equals. 15%, well, we've defined that as 15 divided by 100. And you can either put that in your calculator, 15 divided by 100, or you can just move the decimal 2 places in your head. Either one is fine. Then the of, in this case, is multiply. And 80, I know this is hard. Yeah, it stays 80. Okay, so in our calculator, we would just put 15 divided by 100 times 80 to find our X, to find our answer. You could also use a general phrase. The part is a percent of the total. That will work to calculate the part and the total. And you just replace whichever piece is unknown, use the X, and then replace is with equals and of with multiply. So if it hadn't already been worded this way, I might be able to use that particular phrase. To be honest with you, at this point, I prefer, if it's not already written as what is some percent of a number, then I like to use proportions method, which I'll show you next. That's a possibility. Let's estimate the previous answer. By now, maybe you've already figured it out, but let's take just a moment, because I want you to be really good at figuring out things like 10% of a number and 20%, 30% of a number. So how's this work? Well, to find 10% of any number, you move the decimal 1 place to the left. It's the same as dividing by 10. So 10% of a number is the same as dividing by 10. You can then multiply that value by 2 to get 20%, or by 3 for 30%, etc. Now, of course, if I'm looking for 50% of a number, I'll probably just divide it in half, divide it by 2. But from 10% up to maybe 40%, I'll figure out what 10% is and then multiply by 2, 3, or 4. So what's 10% of 80? It's going to be 8. And because there's a decimal point, right? So 80 with a decimal is divided by 10, or we move the decimal over, that becomes 8. 20% of 80, that's going to be the same as 2 times 8. So it's going to be 16. 15 is going to be between 8 and 16. In fact, it'll be halfway between. So hopefully, when you did 15 divided by 100 times 80, you got the answer for 12. And that is halfway between 8 and 16. Let's do what is 78% of 93. How are we going to estimate this answer? I know we can put values in our calculator, but what might be an easy way to do this one? Well, 78%, that could be 78, or we could change it to 75 or 80. Let me see what the rest of it is. 93. Ooh, 93 is really close to 100. So what is 78% of 100? Well, it's just 78. Percent of 100 of total 100 will always just be that number. So our answer is going to be close to 78. I'm not going to worry about whether I'm looking for something that's slightly bigger or slightly smaller than 78, slightly greater or less. I just know I'm looking for something around 78. Go ahead, please try the direct translation method. See that that's actually a really straightforward thing. Let you pause. Okay. So for this one, it's simply going to be x is equal to 78 divided by 100 and then times 93. And I wrote out the words so because I can't really do the x equals. I didn't want it to look confusing with the number of times. So 78 divided by 100 times 93, that's 72.5. We were expecting a number around 78. That's pretty close to 78, especially if the other answer choices are like 10 and 7 and 99, something like that. I like 72.5 or 73 and 78. I'm showing you this one, the proportion method now, but again, I really prefer the direct translation method if you're asked for what is some percent of a number. Here's how you can do the proportion method. We're going to have 2 units. And whenever I have 2 units and 3 numbers and missing a number, we can do a proportion. Well, one of the units in percent problems is always going to be 100. So if I have a question like this is actually finding the total. 65% of a number is 18. What is the number? I used to teach this one as direct translation, but honestly, it's much easier as a proportion. Let's take a look. They tell us that 65% of a number is 18. So 65%, that goes with 18. To find what the number is, well, we're looking for the total. We're looking for the 100% value. So I'm going to say 100% is equal to x. And because I've lined it up this way and put percent over percent, I now have a proportion. 65 over 100 is equal to 18 over x. We can cross multiply to solve. So 65 times x is the same as 18 times 100. My x value ends up being approximately 28. So 65% of a number is 18. That number is 28. And I bet if I went in reverse to check it, let me see, what is 65% of 28, that's 0.65 times 28, came out to be 18.2. So this is a good answer, 28. Later, I'll show you a way that we could have gone ahead and done 65 divided by 100 and then worked with the 18 over x. I'll show you that in just a sec. Let's try example 10. If you know that 85% of the questions are easy and you count 19 easy questions, how many total questions are there? Now, this is a really random kind of word problem, but it's still, I'm just trying to give you a word problem that has a percent given and it's got a part given and you're asked for the total. That's the method to my madness with this word problem. I recommend with this one, when you're given a percent and you're given a smaller part, the smaller number, and asked for the total, try it with the proportion method that we see up above. I'm going to pause the recording and you guys pause your playback and see if you can solve this one on your own. Here we go. We've got 85% of the questions are easy. There's 19 easy questions. What's our total number of questions? So 85% is equal to 19 questions. If all of the questions were easy, if 100% of them were easy, well, then I'd know, I'm sorry, if 100% questions were all easy, then I would know that there were 19 questions total, but it's not that many. I'm not sure how many questions there are, so I'm going to put X. I know it's going to be less, no, I know it's going to be more than 19 because the 19 questions were only 85%, not 100%. But even if that gets confusing, this is going to work for us. 85 over 100 is equal to 19 over X. I'm going to show you two ways to solve this. We've already talked about doing cross multiplication. 85 times X is going to equal to 19 times 100, which just makes it a 19 with 2 zeros after it because the number 100 has 2 zeros in it. Then if I divide both sides by the coefficient, he's sneaking away downstairs, right? Sneaking out the basement door and coming in over on this side, trying to get away from the X. We are left with 1900 divided by 85, 22.4. Or, you know what, there's not going to be 0.4 questions. It's going to be 22 questions. Another way that we could have solved this would be to go ahead and say 85 divided by 100 is 0.85. Then you can still essentially cross multiply and say 0.85x is equal to 19 and divide both sides by 0.85. That may actually come in more handy later if there's a different formula, but this works. 19 divided by 0.85 is still going to be 22. So a couple of ways to solve it. I think this one works however you want to do it. Ready for the next one? Let's see what it says. Giving you a moment, thinking about this one, seeing if you like it. That was question number 10, or example 10. Let's see what's next. Example 11. Alex and Carter were on vacation. They paid the following amounts for breakfast each day. $15.22, blah, blah, blah. They paid a 25% tip each time. What was the total amount they tipped while on vacation for breakfast? Okay. And here, let's do an estimate. And what you're going to find is, even when we try to be more specific, we can still do an estimate for the total amount spent on breakfast. So first, the total amount spent on breakfast. We're going to estimate that. We're going to say 15 plus, I rounded that one down. So let's round up the 18 up to 19. And let's round that 14.93 to 15. And let's round down the 17.36. And I wonder if we can actually round it to 20 and 20. Does this come out to be 66? It does, doesn't it? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 66. So this works. It's a lot faster than putting in 0.22 and 18.73. This is much quicker. Even if you don't do it in your head, it's still quicker than putting in the exact amounts. Now, let's do the next step. We're going to be looking for what is 25% of that $66. But what do you say we estimate? So 10%, what if you left a 10% tip for $66? Remember, we just moved the decimal one place to the left. Be $6.60. Now, if I do that, and then if I multiply by 2, that's going to be $12.20. And 6.6 times 3 is going to be, what is that one? 8 carry the 1, 18, 19. Is it $19? No, am I getting too high? 10% tip for $6.60, $12.20, and add another 60. Oh yeah, I can do that. $18.80. So I'm expecting something between $12.20, so between $12.20 and $18.80. Now, by now, I gotta be honest with you. This might have been faster to work with $70 and figuring out what 25% of that is. But let's face it, with the direct translation method, this comes out pretty quickly. What would this one be if we use the direct translation method? I want to still work with the 66. What is 25% of, I did $66. I guess in the past I had 65, so I probably did round one up to 20. X equals 25 divided by 100 times 66. And I'm feeling it's going to be around 16 bucks. Let's see, 25 divided by 100 times 66. 16.5. That is still working with the simpler number. I wonder if before, sometimes I round the 18.73 up to 20 and the 17.36 to 15. That works too. Again, we're just kind of approximating. If you do this perfectly, I mean, like put all those numbers in and then do 25% of the exact amount, if I remember correctly, it comes out to be like 16. Oh, well, let me pause. I'll figure it out. All right. If I do the whole thing, then I get what is 25% of $66.24. So you already know it's going to be really close, right? 0.25 times 66.24, $16.56. So unless all the answer choices were right at 16.56, 16.5, I wouldn't have to solve this problem all the way through. I can just approximate And again, I think it works if I do like 20 and 15, you're still going to get pretty close to the answer that way. All right, I have a separate video for doing the problems that are currently on page M17. So I'm going to call it quits for this recording, and thank you for watching it. I hope this was helpful for you. And yeah, good luck with the pages on the next page, because there's a couple of really tough ones on there for that one. So I send you with good thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.